Welcome to the Luxury Business Podcast. This podcast was created to highlight the incredible stories of luxury experts and luxury businesses in the small business sector. Each episode explores what it means to run a purpose-driven luxury business. And more importantly, we get to know the expert or the person behind the business. We will look at their journey as a luxury business expert and advisor and their journey so far. From fresh insights to the good, the bad, and ugly, I strongly believe that there are always lessons to learn from working in an industry considered by many to be for the privileged and the glamorous. Thank you so much for being our most treasured guest on the Luxury Business Podcast today. Now let's get right down to it. Please introduce yourself to the audience.
I'm Aaron Ahuvia. I'm a professor of marketing at the University of Michigan-Dearborn. I also have an appointment at the Penny W. Stamps School of Art and Design at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. And I teach courses in human-centered design as well as marketing. My work is around consumer insights. I'm really best known for my research on brand love. I started doing that many years ago, over 30 years ago.
Wow.
And published the first research ever really on that topic in particular. And I've continued to publish in that area. I'm certainly, if you want sort of one name that's associated with the concept of brand love, that would probably be me. So that's what I'm best known for. And I also do work with companies. I do a lot of keynote speaking, consulting, and I've done that for leading companies around the issue of brand love and how to create brand love. And as I think about it more, whether brand love is even something that a company should be trying to create, but those types of issues.
Wow. Oh my goodness. That is an amazing portfolio. And I absolutely adore what you said about brand love, because whether we like it or not, that extreme emotion that luxury invokes sometimes can only come from a deep love of a brand. But before we get to that and all that exciting stuff that you're going to be sharing with us today, can you tell me what was your childhood like, please?
Sure. So I grew up, my father was a professor actually at the University of Michigan. I joke that I went into the family business. Of course, it doesn't work that way at universities. You don't get a job there because your dad taught there, and I came there quite by accident as it happened. But yeah, so I grew up in an academic family in Ann Arbor, Michigan. It was a very educated community. Almost all of my friends' parents were professors, so they're faculty brats. Was a hippie. I'm not old enough to have anywhere near been a real hippie, but I was a wannabe hippie in my teenage years. I went to an alternative school, studied philosophy, actually started taking university courses in philosophy when I was, I think, 15 years old in high school. There was a way to get in and do that. And I kind of had a knack for that. Went through and got a degree in philosophy. However, there aren't any jobs in philosophy.
To be or not to be.
That was, and that was okay. But I was interested. You talk about purpose-driven brands. I've always had a purpose-driven career. I was very interested in employee-owned businesses and workplace democracy, and managed to get a job working at a company named Duff & Phelps in Chicago that set up employee buyouts. So the employees of a company would purchase all the stock in something called an ESOP, an employee stock ownership plan. And then they would become the owners of the company in which they worked. And so I worked for a number of years in finance, helping set that up. I loved the idea behind that, but I didn't actually like my job, what I did every day. That may sound familiar to some listeners too, that, something can sound attractive in principle, but when you actually go and do it, it's not what you want to be doing. But in order to do that work, I needed to get an MBA. So I was in the MBA program at Kellogg, which is Northwestern.
Yes, yes.
And I went to one of my marketing professors and said, I really don't like my job. What should I do? And he said, I hear you talk in class. You're not an MBA person. You are a professor. That's just your calling. Why don't you switch from the MBA program to the PhD program in marketing and go and become a marketing professor? So I took him up on that offer and moved into the PhD program in marketing. And there I had a very curious sort of turn of events where I was in a course. There's a famous marketing professor, some people may have heard of, Philip Kotler, Professor Kotler.
Yes.
And I was in his seminar, and he was talking about how everything is marketing, that, even like dating is marketing because you're marketing yourself to the other person. I was in my 20s and single and thought that was way more interesting than selling soap. So I asked if I could do my term paper on dating as marketing. He actually connected me with a Professor Mara Edelman, who had a bunch of research on dating services. And this was before dating services were really a big thing. They were just getting going. The internet had not yet started, but the internet was like 1 year away at this point. So we started doing research on dating services, and the two of us became the world's leading experts on dating services. And this I can say with great confidence because we were the only experts on dating services. We had no competition at all. There was nobody else doing work on this area. So it wasn't really hard to become number one when you're the only person in the field.
Absolutely.
But we had a great deal of fun. It was super interesting. I used to go and do these workshops where I would teach people how to do singles ads, how to write singles ads. It's like, PhD student in marketing is going to come and teach you how to write your singles ad. So I made some extra money that way. Had a lot of fun. And I actually ended up on the Oprah Winfrey show talking about dating services and singles ads. And that was great. And I really, again, if you talk about purpose-driven brands, it not only was fun, but it felt very purpose-driven to me because I've always really been about and valued bringing people together. And the thought that I could help people meet somebody and maybe fall in love, that was great. That's a fabulous job if you could, have anything to do with that. You're really helping people.
Absolutely. So, I'm glad you've actually said that because I was actually going to interject in terms of, what you said about helping people, et cetera, et cetera. So we've now got to the part where I will ask about how you got started. So just to illustrate, you've gotten, you've changed majors, you've gotten started in marketing, picked up an extra job. So how did you then go and become a professor of marketing?
Yeah, so once you're in the PhD program, that's what you're going to do. The PhD program is very small. They take about 5 students per year. And wow. You're just trained to be a professor. That's the only job that you're going to get when you're out of there. And I was very lucky. It's a global job market. You look for jobs certainly all over America if you're American, but also really all over the world for a lot of people. And it just happened to be an opening in my hometown at the University of Michigan. And it's a fantastic business school and marketing department. And I was quite lucky and fortunate to get that offer and get to go back home, which was great. So I got to go home and be in the same town as my parents and have, see some old friends. And that's always been nice. I still live in Ann Arbor today, although at a certain point I moved from teaching on the Ann Arbor campus to the Dearborn campus, where I'm now full-time. They have other appointments in Ann Arbor too.
Fantastic. So how did you then start looking at luxury brands?
That comes out of the brand love stuff to a degree. So I've always been interested in my work in brand symbolism and how people use brands to communicate something about themselves or something about the occasion or what they're doing with other people. And that a lot of the value is, everyone knows, a lot of the value in luxury goods is in this symbolic value that they have for people. Of course, the materials are very good and the craftsmanship is very good, and you need all of that. But it goes well beyond that. People really buy this stuff in part because what it says about them as a person and the kind of way they want to construct their identity. And that process of using brands to help you sort of become the person you want to be and construct a certain type of identity, that's also very central to my research on brand love. And that people love brands that they are proud to own. People love brands that they feel say something positive about them.
Absolutely.
And the different types of brands that people want are linked to what they think is positive, right? Some people think, having very sort of fashion forward, out there kind of clothing projects an attitude of aesthetic daring and talent and individualism in a positive way. And other people look at that and they just think that's horrible. They don't want anything to do with that.
Absolutely.
So everybody's using their publicly visible possessions, their clothing, what if they use a bag, carry a bag, whatever that is, their car, their home. We all use this stuff to present an image that we feel good about. And it's linked then to people's deeper values about, well, what do you feel good about? And that connects so much to the purpose-driven luxury, because in the past, there was really just one meaning that luxury was selling, and that is elite status.
Yeah.
That was it. I'm an elite. There's a bunch of different versions of that, but that was kind of in the past. Really, what was being sold? Yes, of course. Yes, there is the quality, and yes, if it's a luxury wine, it tastes very good. And if it's a luxury chocolate, it tastes very good. But let's be honest. We all know that you can get very good tasting wines and very well made handbags for a lot less than a lot of these companies are charging. So a lot of it was around this elite status. Today, however, that's still an important part of the luxury market. It's even the largest part of the luxury market. But we're seeing consumers wanting luxury goods that say more about them, that are more articulate, that talk about values that go beyond just I'm an elite. And that's where the purpose-driven luxury firms come in and have a chance to make their mark and carve out a niche for themselves that is possible for a somewhat smaller brand as they compete with these enormous luxury conglomerates that have a lot of resources.
I'm glad you actually said that, because this is something I've definitely noticed, especially with the Gen Zs and to some extent the millennials, who are now saying we want a lot more from our favorite brands. They would look into your sustainability practices. They would look if you're greenwashing. They would look to see if you are truly walking your talk, et cetera, and they will go out of their way to hold you accountable. So I love what you said about purpose-driven brands. Maybe the smaller brands now have a chance to compete against the bigger, more established brands in that kind of respect. So, and this leads me nicely to my next question to you, which is, the part that extreme emotion plays when it comes to luxury purchases. So you spoke about brand love earlier, about your work. So if you can elaborate a bit more around that kind of emotion that people feel when they buy something from a luxury brand that they love.
There is a lot of emotion. It's an extremely emotionally charged event when you especially if it's not something you do all the time. Right? So I know people who are phenomenally wealthy, and for them, what I think of as a luxury brand is just a normal brand to them. But for a lot of people who are reaching up a little bit, for whom it's aspirational, even if they're quite affluent, it's still an unusual purchase. There is a lot of emotion there. And the emotion is something you feel when something is a special or unusual event. You know, you don't walk through the day in emotional turmoil all the time. It wouldn't work that way. You know, intense emotions, whether they're positive or negative emotions, are reserved for sort of unusual situations. And that's one of the things that luxury can provide, even for quite affluent consumers. I think that that's one of the things that luxury does for more affluent consumers, is it gives them something that still feels special and still feels unusual, because the product is, you know, that good, that special, that expensive, frankly, that even though they've got a lot of money, they don't buy this every day. They don't spend that kind of money without thinking about it. And it creates a little bit of a special occasion, and that special occasion creates an emotionality there. But love is more than an emotion. Love is a relationship. And love is a relationship that goes on over time. So it involves emotions and it contains very intense emotions, obviously. But it's more than an emotion. It's an ongoing relationship. And that is a strategy that is also very fitting for luxury brands, to create those longer term connections and those deeper connections that go past the moment of sale and really make the brand something that the consumer wants to be part of their ongoing identity.
I like that, because from your explanation and from your research, when you talk about brand love, you were talking about compounded love. So love that is built over time. So say someone dreams about making a fabulous luxury purchase of a particular brand. They buy the first time, they fall in love, and then they continue to love and fall in love with a brand over time and develop that relationship. So in your research, especially because I want to bring us to your book, your fabulous book, which was a bestseller on Amazon. It was recommended as one of the top 10 or 20 business books of last year. So I will urge any listener listening to this right now, go out and buy that book. It is absolutely fantastic. So can you explain a bit more some of the principles that you share in your book, please?
Yeah. So the book is called The Things We Love, How Our Passions Connect Us and Make Us Who We Are. It's a book about the psychology of brand love. What it really means to love a thing, an object, a brand, whatever it might be, a product, and the role that it plays in our lives. And the big insight of the book is that, yes, quality is very important, and people love brands. The brand has to be very high quality. You can look at Cadillac in the United States as a very interesting case study where they were making fabulous cars in the 1950s when we were this very luxurious brand. And then they tried to be a luxury brand that didn't produce quality. That they had a lot of advertising and they had a lot of flashy chrome, but their cars weren't very good. And over time, it just killed them. I mean, they lost all of their prestige that way, and then managed, interestingly, to get it back by changing and becoming a real quality producer again. And then as a result, they are now once again a high-end luxury brand, especially in the United States, because they are making good stuff. So yeah, we all know that what you produce has to be the highest quality, but that's just the start. One of the insights from the book is that if you produce something that's very high quality, but the only relationship that a consumer has to it is that it's functional and works for them in a quality way, that will produce limited amounts of brand loyalty. They'll be very open to something else that's even higher quality. And nobody goes around and talks on the internet and brags to their friends about a brand like that. They use it and they like it. It's functional, but they don't really love it. And you don't get the enthusiasm, the brand evangelism that you want from consumers. If you want to have that, you have to go beyond the quality and you have to create passion. But here is the key point. Passion in the human brain at a neurological level is reserved for people. Your brain is hardwired not to get too passionate directly about stuff. But we do get passionate about stuff all the time.
Yes. So so why is that though?
Why is that, right? That's the curious question. And the answer is when your brain is getting passionate about a brand or a product, it's because it's connected to a person in some way. So there's two main ways that it's connected to a person. It's really about a person or a group of people. So perhaps it's connected to, someone gives you a gift, right? Imagine you're dating somebody and they give you a gift, a vase that's a decorative vase, and your relationship is going very well. You think it's beautiful. You put it in your home. You're very proud of this vase. You would even say, oh, I love that vase. And then you have a terrible breakup with this person. Well, what's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to get rid of that vase. You're not going to want that vase around anymore. And so what you can see is that your love for that vase is totally linked to your feeling about the person that gave it to you. It's really just a symbol or a connection to that person. And that's a very overt example, but a lot of the things we love have that quality. They connect us to other people. Sometimes it's a particular person, like maybe one of your parents or a friend. Sometimes it's a group of people that you want to belong to. Apple owners who felt like there was a community. Everyone who owned Apple was part of this larger community of Apple owners. This was a number of years ago, but this feeling was very strong about 20 years ago. And that buying an Apple phone sort of made you part of that group and therefore connected you to people that way. So maybe it's the owner or the founder. I've talked to people who are Ferrari owners and are very big Ferrari aficionados, and they tend to really know about the life of the founder, Enzo Ferrari.
Yes.
And to them, the car, the reason they're so passionate about the car is because in their mind, they've connected it to the owner of this, to Enzo Ferrari. And so their brain is now, the car becomes sort of eligible for love because it has that kind of a human connection. So in fashion, it's often a designer who plays that role.
Especially the creative director. I find that many fashionistas or people who adore couture, they will follow a creative director from one brand to another because of that passion. So yes, I absolutely agree with you on that.
Right. So your brain then is hardwired in ways we don't have time to get into the show, but are really interesting, not to get too passionate about stuff. However, the stuff gets linked to a person in some way, and then your brain can get passionate about it. That sort of eliminates the brain's defenses against that. And now you can start to get passionate. And the other way to do it is instead of, or in addition to, linking the brand to some other person like the creative director or the founder or a celebrity spokesperson, the consumer comes to see the brand as part of their own identity. They come to see the brand as part of themselves. And because they love themselves, if the brand becomes part of their own identity, then they love the brand. And you can see this. So there's a test for each of these. So the test for is it connected to a person is, if your opinion about this person changes, does it change your opinion about the brand?
Oh, right? That's a good one.
Yeah. But the other test is, okay, how do you know if it's part of your own identity? Well, there are certain emotions like guilt, or offense and pride that we only feel about ourselves. So if someone insults us, we feel offended. If they insult somebody else, we don't feel offended. You feel offended if you've been insulted. So then ask yourself, if this brand were insulted, would you personally feel offended? A lot of times the answer is yes. And you see this in people who are on the internet. Somebody says something bad about whatever their beloved brand is, and they run out there to defend their brand. That kind of behavior shows that they see the brand as part of their own identity, because you wouldn't feel personally offended, if it wasn't already part of your identity. And similarly, if the brand is something particularly good, you feel proud. You see that a lot in sports fans where their sports team is part of their identity. And they say, we won, we won this game. I'm so proud. You didn't win the game. You just sat on the couch.
You were not on the field.
You barely got up off the couch. You just drank beer, right? But
I love
nonetheless, they feel it's part of their identity.
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely. And again, to prove exactly what, you just reminded me of a situation, I think last year, when Tiffany decided, they played a prank and they decided that their brand color was going to be an egg yellow. And they created this egg yellow space. They really went really far with a prank, and they put it on Instagram. And on a good day, Tiffany would get maybe 200 comments under their posts. This time they got 10,000 comments. Actually, last I checked, it was 14,000 comments telling them they'd made a mistake, telling them to go back to the Tiffany blue. I mean, these were people getting really, and it was an April Fool's joke, April Fool's Day joke. And they got so passionate. So it just really confirms everything that you've been saying about luxury brands. And another question I want to ask you before we start to wrap up is, what do you see as the future of luxury?
I think the future of luxury is going to be more diverse in a lot of ways. So instead of, right now, the luxury is organized primarily along one dimension from lower to higher. So based on how elite it wants to be, how expensive it wants to be, most of the brands you could sort of stack up as, they're all luxury brands, but some are super luxury brands, or even, ultra premium super luxury brands in this way. Whereas in the future, you'll still see that kind of a distinction, but you'll see a much more distinction around values. You'll see brands that it's a luxury brand, but it has a certain ethnic identity or national or cultural identity that's not necessarily European. It's a luxury brand, but it's associated with a certain political point of view or a social point of view. Or maybe it's a luxury brand, it's associated with a particular artistic movement. So there'll be a lot of variety and differentiation in the brands that isn't just, top to bottom, how expensive is it?
I like that. I love that. And actually, again, because you are a professor, you are right, because immediately after the pandemic, when lots of Chinese high-end luxury clients couldn't travel to Europe, to America, etc. What began to happen was that some of the bigger brands recognized that a lot of Chinese people wanted to shop locally. They preferred their own, like as you rightly said, brands they could identify with socially, ethnic brands, etc. So they began to invest in high-end luxury brands that were Chinese. So again, that national identity, that investment in brands, not just because it's for the elite, but because it represents a certain thing to people, that's already beginning to happen as we speak in certain parts of the world. Same thing I've noticed a tiny bit happening in India, and the same thing I've noticed is also happening in Africa. So let's watch this space. And I think that could be very interesting for the future. So I'm really glad you've actually mentioned that. And again, before you go, I want to ask you a couple more questions. So are you launching anything new? Is there anything about you that you want our listeners to know?
Yeah, I'm doing a fair amount of speaking. I know that this is out of London is the origin of this particular podcast. I don't currently have plans to be in London. I'm going to be speaking. The Sorbonne is having a special conference about my work. And I'm going to be in Paris for that. And then earlier, there's another business school in Paris, IPAG, on a different trip, is also having a conference about my work. I'm going to be there. If any of your listeners are in Rome, the great business school there is Lewis, and they are having also a conference about my research. And I'm going to be presenting both for businesses and for academics, but primarily for businesses there. And then also in Lisbon, I'm going to be presenting there at a university there, setting up a conference again about my work for businesses. So there's a lot of that going on. If you want to contact me, I'm pretty easy to find. A friend of mine said it would be Ahuvia to remember Ahuvia. So I thought that was very good. So it's Ahuvia, letter A, Ahuvia. You just Google me, I'll show up. You can say Ahuvia brand love, or even just brand love, and it'll probably show up. Or the phrase "The Things We Love" is my book, and I've got a website, The Things We Love. So if you're in any of those places and you're interested in hearing me talk, do be in touch. And if you're not in those places and you're interested in hearing me talk, well, be in touch too, and maybe we can set something up.
Fantastic. And just in case, if you need a briefcase carrier, someone to carry your folders, I'll be more than happy to do that, because that really sounds right up my street. It's the kind of thing I love. So I'm pretty sure, I'll see what I can do, especially Paris is only a couple of hours away from me. So let's see how that works out. But before you go, I want to ask you two things I usually ask my guests. Two questions. So what is the most memorable meal you've ever had? And share one thing about yourself that will surprise us.
Wow, the most memorable meal. I am so into food. You have no idea.
Oh, I love that.
When I was I'm the only person I know, except for my friend Amelia, who I used to do this with. But when we were in high school, we actually threw dinner parties for our friends where we would cook elaborate meals for them. So it's very hard for me to think of like one that I would call the most memorable meal. But, just because I started talking, got me thinking about my youth with this. I'm going to say one of the most memorable meals I ever had was that first dinner party in high school where I had my friends come over and they thought we were so strange to do such a thing. But everyone had a great time and the food was fabulous. And I really was learning to cook. So that would be one highly memorable meal that I'll put on the list there. And then what was the second question?
One thing about you that will surprise people.
One thing about me that will surprise surprise people. Boy, after hearing me for this long, you've got to realize that there's a lot of unusual things here. Here you go. Here's one, because this is just an interesting story. I've got all this research on love, so I'll tell you a love story that is a personal, a human love story, not a brand love story, which is the night I met my wife. I met her at a conference. We went out to dinner. When we were done having dinner and some drinks after, I went home that night and I told my roommate that I had met the woman I was going to marry. And she went home that night and wrote in her diary that she had met the man she was going to marry. So in this world we've been together now for well over 30 years.
Wow.
So in this world of where people are swiping on dates left and right, that's a surprising story.
That is such a beautiful way to end the podcast, because again, this is not just about things we love. It's about people we love and people that have shaped us. So thank you so much. That was a great session. And thank you so much, everyone. It's been so beautiful to have you on the Luxury Business Podcast today, Professor. We've talked about everything from your childhood to your journey, your career journey, to your amazing book, The Things We Love, and also to the future of luxury. So thank you, all the listeners, for listening to the very end. And if you love this particular episode, please subscribe and like and give us a 5-star rating. So till next time, thank you so much and have a wonderful day.